This is the wilderness of northern Alaska. After 2 years, Marty has returned here. However, he is not rushing to establish hunting routes. Instead, he's off to hunt reindeer, since food is crucial for long-term survival here. It coincides with the reindeer migration period, so Marty sees this as an opportunity. He follows the tracks left by the reindeer, and after 2 hours, he finally catches up with the herd on a hillside. Without hesitation, Marty gets out of his vehicle and aims his rifle. Despite the distance of over 300 yards and the windy conditions, Marty is unsure of a precise shot, especially since the reindeer are constantly moving. To avoid startling the herd, he decides to stop shooting and thinks of a way to get closer. Marty continues the chase on his snowmobile as the herd moves quickly into the valley. Reaching the nearest hilltop, he is mindful of the noise from his snowmobile. There is a problem though. If the reindeer retreat into the dense forest, it would greatly increase the difficulty of shooting, which Marty wants to avoid. Thus, he runs after them, trying to close the distance quickly. Fortunately, his efforts pay off, and he catches up with them just before they enter the forest. Seeing his chance, Marty quickly raises his shotgun. The reindeer, unaware of their peril, move slowly forward, giving Marty the opportunity to choose his target. A few reindeer notice him, but they do not realize the danger, simply staring at Marty. For a hunter, this is a golden opportunity. Marty takes the shot without hesitation, and the hunt is very successful. He bags a large deer and quickly processes the meat. He discards the innards, but packs the rest, which is somewhat wasteful as he doesn't use everything. With this meat, Marty won't have to worry about food for a long time, allowing him to focus on his hunting plans. The Rockies are now covered in snow, and Tom is facing his 35th winter here. Despite being a year older, his vigor remains strong. He is headed to a place called Lenny Lake in the Percy Mountains, a remote lake where he plans to catch beavers. Since his usual hunting grounds are nearly depleted of beavers, he's trying his luck here this year. Tom reaches the lake's edge but needs to find the areas where beavers are active. Finding no signs in the current area, he continues his search. After visiting several spots, Tom finally spots signs of beavers, indicated by the clear presence of beaver droppings in the water. He then starts setting traps, securing the first one. Catching beavers often requires luck, and one trap might not be enough. To increase his chances, Tom plans to set several more traps and continues looking for suitable spots. Tom is setting up the last trap of the day by a tributary of the lake, where he found many signs of beaver activity, making it an ideal location. However, a good location alone is not enough. Tom pulls out his secret weapon, a special sauce made from beaver castor sacks. By applying it around the trap, it emits a beaver scent. Beavers have a strong territorial instinct and will come to chase away what they perceive as an intruder, trapping themselves in the process. Tom is very confident in this trap and plans to return tomorrow for a likely bounty. However, the area is remote, and he has to walk 5 kilometers to reach his truck. At his age, this trip is exhausting. Resting in the back of his truck, Tom reflects on his youthful days when he felt no competition. The next day he returns, but the weather has turned, with heavy snow indicating a challenging day ahead. Near the lake, Tom's dismay grows as he discovers human footprints, suggesting other hunters have been here. Following the tracks, he finds a trap set by another hunter in a stream, placed before his own. Respecting the first come first served principle, Tom decides to withdraw to avoid overhunting the area. He checks his traps only to find them empty, with no catch even after inspecting all. It appears the other hunter had already caught the beavers in this area, leaving no point in staying. Tom collects his traps and faces a grim situation. His usual hunting grounds are nearly depleted, and he must now find new locations. However, remote areas have been claimed by others, leaving Tom struggling to think of unchecked spots. If he fails to secure furs this winter, he will face financial hardships next year and needs to quickly devise a plan. Meanwhile, Marty has returned to the northern Alaskan wilderness after 2 years, planning to spend 4 weeks here before moving to the Revelation Mountains. This strategy allows him to hunt in 2 areas, maximizing his benefits. His choice proves correct as he quickly accumulates furs within 2 weeks. If this pace continues, he is set for a profitable hunting season. Yet, not content with the status quo, Marty sets more traps, targeting minks and otters along the riverbank. After searching the frozen river, he finds mink tracks. Although mink fur is not very valuable, Marty is not choosy. Anything marketable is welcome. Following the tracks, he discovers a den. Tom is now setting a trap at the entrance of the den. There has been confusion whether minks are the same as weasels. They are not. Although both belong to the Mustelida family, their habits are quite different. Weasels typically live in mountains and plains, whereas minks thrive in cold climates, mainly residing by rivers, lakes, and streams. Thus, they are entirely different. After setting this trap, Marty continues to look for other targets. The heavy snow creates favorable conditions for him, and he soon finds new tracks from otters. Otters have short limbs and usually slide on their bellies through the snow. Otter fur is high quality, commonly used for hats and gloves, typically priced around $200. Excited to find otters, Marty follows their tracks to their entrance and exit points. He sets a trap he previously used for capturing badgers, now targeting otters. Confident, Marty waits for the prey to be caught. 2 weeks later, having spent 4 weeks in the area, Marty is about to fly to the Revelation Mountains. Before leaving, he checks the otter trap, but, unfortunately, hasn't caught anything in 2 weeks. Despite his reluctance, he removes the trap to not delay his hunting schedule. He reaches his plane, needing to leave during the limited daylight of just over 5 hours. Without night vision on his plane, he cannot fly in the dark. After securing the hunter's cabin, he returns to the plane. The engine roars to life, and Marty begins his 4-hour flight. The weather is good, making for a smooth journey. After flying for 4 hours, he arrives over the Revelation Mountains and lands smoothly, ready to continue his grand hunting plan. Tom, on the other hand, has had a terrible hunting season. 4 weeks in, he hasn't caught a single animal. He finally finds a promising site for catching beavers, only to discover it's already been claimed. Tom admits he's never been this unlucky. To break the deadlock, he decides to set traps for sables in high-altitude areas, hoping for a repeat of last year's successful sable fur harvest. After setting the traps, Tom heads out on his snowmobile. However, his frustration peaks when the snowmobile gets stuck on a stump just outside his home. Unable to move it, Tom sits down, visibly upset. After some reflection, he decides not to let the stump win and takes an axe to it, venting all his frustration on the stubborn wood. After clearing the stump, Tom restarted his snowmobile and continued towards his destination. After some travel, he finally arrived at the hunting area and quickly began setting traps. After exploring the region, Tom chose his first target and set up the initial trap in the usual fashion, fixing a box to a tree with bait inside and a piece of rotting deerskin hung underneath, lit to emit a pungent odor to attract more sables. After setting the first trap, Tom continued searching for more targets. He planned to set up 7 more traps. A minor mishap at the start had cost him valuable time, so he was now racing against the clock. Despite his age, Tom worked efficiently and managed to set all the traps in just over 2 hours. Although not as fast as Marty, Tom was determined to break his streak of 0 catches by establishing another hunting line. For this, Tom brought along Nancy, who he usually treated like a princess and kept away from hunting. Times had changed, and without fur income, they would struggle. After preparing the gear, the new hunting line was set behind Tom's house, extending 12 kilometers. Since Nancy was inexperienced, Tom took it upon himself to teach her properly. They quickly reached the first trap location, where Tom began his lesson. After setting the first trap, they continued looking for more sites. Besides sable traps, Tom also targeted minks this time, as mink fur could fetch between $20 to $30 each. Less than usual, but necessary under the circumstances. The busy time flew by, and soon all traps were set. They headed back the same way. checking the traps they had set a few hours earlier for any surprises. Surprisingly, they found a mink calmly lying in one of the traps, which delighted Tom. He handled it fondly, hoping it would bring good luck. They then headed home, looking forward to the next day's potential rewards. The next day brought heavy snow, but Tom and Nancy still ventured out. Nancy, having completed a crash course the day before, checked one hunting line alone while Tom took another, which required 6 hours to complete. However, Tom's bad luck continued as a fallen tree blocked his path. With bushes on either side, he couldn't go around, so he chose to cross over by building a snow ramp. Fortunately, this worked, and Tom was able to continue. After some more travel, he arrived at the first trap, which, unfortunately, was empty. Tom then moved on to the next trap, which was also empty. With no other options, he lit the deerskin, hoping for a last effort to attract sables. He continued to check the remaining traps, but all 8 were fruitless. Tom was visibly upset and disappointed, forcing him to return home dejected. Arriving home to find it completely dark and Nancy still not back heightened his worry. He quickly set out to find her, calling her name along the trap line in the eerily quiet, dark woods. Just as his anxiety peaked, he saw a light ahead. Nancy had returned. Though relieved, the fact that her line also yielded nothing made their situation even grimmer. Now, they had to figure out how to navigate this tough period. 1 month later, after hunting in the northern Alaskan wilderness, Marty flew back to the Revelation Mountains to start the second round of his hunting season. He prepared to reactivate his hunting line, taking his traps and setting out on his snowmobile. Marty planned to cover 50 kilometers in 1 day. However, with only about 5 hours of daylight this time of year in Alaska, the task was daunting. Fortunately, last year's wooden frames were still in place, saving him time in setting traps and placing bait. Yet, his journey was not smooth due to unusually heavy snowfall this year, making progress difficult. Marty joked about how last year's mild snow seemed to have accumulated into this year's heavy fall. After much effort to free his snowmobile, Marty continued, only to face more obstacles. The path he cleared last year was overgrown with bushes, forcing him to stop again to clear the way, further delaying his progress. After clearing for over half an hour, Marty pressed on. However, his vehicle struggled with the deep snow, shaking it side to side, attempting to break free, but to no avail. He had to stop again to move the snowmobile. Eventually, when he managed to move a few meters further, the snowmobile got stuck again. Marty concluded that the snow was too thick for the snowmobile's power. He replaced the old belt on the engine with a new one, hoping for better traction. Fortunately, the new belt worked well, and he managed to proceed, but the sun was already setting. He had only covered 15 kilometers and decided to set up the last trap and return to camp for safety, somewhat disheartened by the slow progress. The next few days did not go as smoothly as hoped. It took a week to fully reactivate the 50-kilometer hunting line. Today was finally the day to check the results. Last year, this area yielded over 50 furs in just 2 months, and Marty hoped for similar success this year. However, his expectations led to greater disappointment, as even these traps were empty. On his way, Marty found traces of a sable that appeared to be several days old, which added to his concerns. Due to this situation, it's evident that there are very few sables in this area. Marty continued to check another 20 kilometers of the line, but still didn't find a single trace. However, the worst was yet to come. While passing through an open area, Marty found wolf tracks, suggesting they were the reason for the scarcity of prey in this region. Since wolves are protected by law during this period, Marty had no choice but to relocate. Mount Changgang, the tallest peak in this valley with its dense spruce forest at the base, seemed like a perfect habitat for sables. Therefore, Marty decided to try his luck there. However, a new challenge arose. A glacier river lay between him and the mountain. Finding a safe way to cross was perplexing. Marty climbed up the mountain for a better view and indeed found a section of the river that was frozen. Without hesitation, he headed there, knowing he needed to find a new hunting area or face ending his season early. Upon reaching the frozen river, Marty didn't recklessly cross, but carefully tested the ice thickness to ensure it was safe. As he tapped, the ice made hollow sounds, making him nervous. The combined weight of himself and his snowmobile was about 600 pounds, and the sound indicated that the ice might not be very thick. The danger of the ice breaking halfway through was real, making Marty hesitant to proceed. Yet without crossing, he had no income, so he decided to take the risk, adhering to the saying, "A hungry man is a bold man." Fortunately, he crossed safely and set up camp in the forest since it was already late. Marty spent the night and started his hunting work the next morning. To his delight, he found numerous sable tracks in the snow, indicating a rich supply of game in this untouched area. Since it was undeveloped, he had to search for animal tracks and set new traps simultaneously, essentially starting from scratch. Although the process was hard, the plentiful sable tracks made it enjoyable for Marty. However, his discovery of a line of wolf tracks instantly put him on alert. Wolves, notorious predators, could disrupt the ecological balance and waste his hunting efforts, which Marty could not allow. His priority was to eliminate the wolf. Marty set up a path under a tree, placed a large trap on a log, and used a reindeer skin tied to the tree as bait, waiting for the wolf to take the bait. By the third day, Marty checked the trap for badgers and smiled upon arrival. The disruptive wolf was caught, eliminating the threat to his hunting activities. He could now confidently exploit this area. Meanwhile, Tom had a rough time. 6 weeks into the hunting season, he had only managed to secure one mink fur. If he didn't make any profit soon, he might indeed face a harsh winter next year. Reluctantly, Tom sought help from his brother Jack, who had provided him with a substantial amount of fur last year. This time, out of necessity, he had to ask for help again. Over the phone, Tom learned that Jack mainly managed a ranch, and few people hunted there, meaning wildlife resources were still abundant. Therefore, Tom decided to give it a try and headed to Idaho after resting for a night and preparing his supplies due to the long distance. After half a day's travel, Tom arrived at Jack's ranch where Jack had been waiting. After a brief embrace, the brothers skipped rest and went straight to business. A river running through Jack's ranch was home to a beaver family. Soon, they were on the riverbank where Tom quickly spotted beaver tracks and fresh gnawed branches, indicating active beavers. Tom decided to set beaver traps, but first he had to drill through the ice, which proved thicker than expected. Despite their efforts with an axe and then an iron rod, the ice remained unbroken. Realizing they underestimated the ice thickness, they brought a chainsaw from home. Although loud, potentially scaring the beavers, they had no choice as breaking the ice was necessary for trapping. Jack began cutting through the ice with the chainsaw, which quickly shattered the ice. However, an embarrassing situation arose. The ice was so thick that even the fully extended chainsaw did not reach the water, making their efforts futile and leaving them disheartened. Knowing Tom was there for the beavers but unable to trap any, they moved to a larger river lined with poplars, a favorite food of beavers, and also an ideal habitat for minks. Tom and Jack decided to try their luck there. However, Tom had not brought bait for trapping minks, so they needed to address this before setting out. They drove to a plain populated with wild rabbits, excellent bait for minks. Catching the agile rabbits was a challenge until Jack revealed his secret weapon, a hunting dog. As they walked into the plains, a rabbit appeared, and Jack quickly fired his shotgun, effectively marking the rabbit for death. Within seconds, the hunting dog successfully captured the target. The rabbit weighed about 6 pounds, providing more than enough meat for their needs. With enough bait secured, they decided to return home. After returning, Tom processed the rabbit for bait. With the bait issue resolved, it was time for their hunting expedition. Snake River, the largest river in the area, is known for its cold, swift waters and abundant wildlife. Soon, Tom and Jack arrived at their destination, donned their wetsuits, and set out in a canoe. They enjoyed the beautiful scenery as they paddled along. After traveling downstream for a while, Tom spotted a beaver lodge and began setting traps. An expert at trapping beavers, Tom found this task relatively easy. However, with the weather turning, they needed to speed up their efforts. As they continued downstream, Tom noticed more signs of beaver activity, indicated by gnawed trees, showing the beavers were very active. This time, Tom used a leg-hold trap connected to an iron stake by a cable, with the other end tied to a bag of rocks and thrown into deep water. When a beaver is caught, it struggles and pulls the trap into the water, drowning it. After setting this trap, they continued downstream, placing several more beaver traps along the way. After finishing with the beaver traps, they began setting mink traps. Minks are semi-aquatic and often fish in the river, making the riverbank the ideal spot for traps. To prevent the traps from being dragged away, Tom weighed them down with rocks. After setting several mink traps, they returned home to wait for the next day. The next day, Tom and Jack returned to Snake River to check their traps. At the first beaver trap, they found it had not been triggered, leaving Tom slightly disappointed. He reset the trap and moved on to the next one. Unfortunately, this trap was also empty, deepening Tom's disappointment. However, their luck changed at the next trap, which contained Tom's first beaver of the season, marking the start of his success. And the good fortune continued. The mink trap had worked, capturing the largest mink Tom had ever caught. Tom was thrilled, as this winter he finally saw hope for substantial income. Together, the mink and beaver could bring him $400, prompting him to plan on increasing his investment in traps to catch up on lost time. Since dealing with the badger, Marty's hunting had become much smoother. Early in the morning, Tom hit success with the first trap, but that was just the beginning. He soon caught several sables, signaling that this area was indeed a hotspot. Besides setting sable traps, Marty also set up other traps and unexpectedly caught another one, delighting him thoroughly. After all, each catch could sell for $500, and with the earlier catches, his earnings quickly surpassed $1,000. Marty continued checking the rest of the traps, but his luck persisted, marking what seemed like a record-breaking day. However, as often happens when things are going too well, trouble was not far behind. The terrain became steeper, slowing his progress, which led to his snowmobile getting stuck in deep snow. Attempts to free it were futile, and suddenly, the engine started emitting thick black smoke. Marty realized something was wrong, opened the hood, and found the engine had malfunctioned. This was a double problem as the snowmobile was essential for his hunting, and without it, he couldn't continue. He thought he was on track for a record day, but instead, he was grounded. Now he had to walk back home, a distance of 8 kilometers. As it was getting late, he decided to spend the night outdoors, concerned about crossing the river in the dark. The next day, Marty packed up and, armed with an axe, made his way back to the hunter's cabin to figure out his next steps. After a night of consideration, he made the tough decision to fly home due to the unusable snowmobile. Upon returning home, Marty didn't give up, but instead pulled out a map to study routes. He had a new, more powerful snowmobile at home, suitable for mountain terrain but too heavy to transport by plane. Marty planned to ride it across more than 500 kilometers to the Revelation Mountains, a true adventure. If all went well, he would arrive in 3 days. Blessed by his family, he set off from a ranch in Idaho. While waiting for the checked traps, Tom didn't want to waste valuable time, so he decided to help his brother Jack with a problem. Jack's pasture was home to many groundhogs, which attracted predators, including jaguars that often preyed on the young groundhogs. So when the jaguars discovered the groundhog burrows, upon arriving at the first trap early in the morning, they made a catch. But this was just the beginning. He continued to catch several sables, proving the area to be a hot spot. They dig, leaving the ground pitted and hazardous for livestock, which could easily injure themselves running. Capturing jaguars not only improved pasture conditions, but also provided valuable fur, a win-win situation. At the first burrow, Tom analyzed and concluded it was empty because there were no signs of recent digging or drag marks, indicating no jaguar presence. After his explanation, Jack understood, and they moved to the next burrow, which showed signs of recent activity. Tom made a snare from a cable that would tighten as the jaguar passed through. He set it inside the burrow entrance, securing it with a stake outside. As they continued, they set traps at every fresh burrow they found. Jack discovered the freshest burrow, and under Tom's guidance, he successfully set a trap there, learning the technique for future use. The next day, Tom began inspecting the traps they had set. Unfortunately, the first 2 traps were empty, leaving him slightly disappointed. However, at the third trap, he was thrilled to find a catch, touching the soft fur of a jaguar he hadn't caught in 3 years. He took his prize back to Jack's house, where, although a hide usually valued at $25, Tom claimed his skills could increase its worth to $150. He then began processing the hide. With winter nearing its end, Tom knew he had to redouble his efforts. In the remote Alaskan wilderness, Marty had already started his journey to the Revelation Mountains, a risky endeavor given the varied terrain, large mountains, and unpredictable Alaskan weather. On his way, he saw a herd of caribou. Normally, he would stop to hunt 1 or 2, but today, he was focused solely on reaching his destination. The path ahead was tough, with 400 kilometers of continuous mountains ahead, and only a narrow path at the foot of the mountains to traverse. Before entering the valley, Marty needed to cross a lake, adding to the challenges of his adventurous journey. The snow depth varied here, but fortunately, Marty's snowmobile was powerful enough to plow through the terrain. He wouldn't have made it with his old snowmobile in such conditions. Despite its strength, sometimes there were minor accidents. For example, the sled attached to the back suddenly became detached when he was crossing a small hill. Upon inspection, he found that the hook connecting it had broken. Luckily, he had brought a spare, or it would have been a very awkward situation. After reconnecting the sled, he continued on his journey. As he traveled further, it started getting darker, and snow began to fall. It looked like a blizzard was approaching, so Marty needed to speed up. However, he soon came to a steep incline blocking his path. The area was wooded and there were signs of previous passage, but Marty wasn't sure if the path was still passable, especially with a blizzard potentially on the way. Getting stuck could be fatal. With no better alternatives visible, after much hesitation, he decided to take a chance and drove his snowmobile into the unknown forest. Fortunately, his gamble paid off. Marty managed to navigate the narrow mountain path and emerged onto a vast open wilderness, easing his journey considerably. He now needed to outrun the approaching storm and find a safe spot to rest. The next day, Marty continued his trek and soon entered a forest that had experienced a fire. The landscape bore the scars of the disaster. As he reflected on nature's fierceness, he had to stop because the charred wood had absorbed sunlight, warming and melting the surrounding snow. His snowmobile needed at least 10 centimeters of snow to operate effectively, but retracing his steps to find another route would waste more time. Considering his options, Marty chose to push forward, stopping occasionally to cool down, and eventually reached a snowy area. On the third day, Marty arrived at the entrance to the Revelation Mountains. Passing through this gateway, he would reach his destination. Despite encountering minor setbacks along the way, he safely made it back to the hunter's cabin and was ready to continue his hunting career. Meanwhile, Tom and his brother returned to Snake River to check their trapping lines. Tom's line extended 15 kilometers, with 18 traps set up, requiring a full day just to inspect. Their timing was unfortunate as the river was low due to a dam upstream controlling the water flow. In shallow areas, they had to carry their boat, significantly slowing them down. Although frustrated, they had no choice but to forge ahead. After 2 hours of stopping and starting, they finally entered the main stream, which made their journey smoother. Soon, they arrived at the first trap, but unfortunately, it was empty. Tom reset the trap, and then the brothers continued on their way. However, the second trap was also empty. It seemed they were not having much luck today.